Welcome to the Emerald City Video Podcast. I'm Russ, and that's Zach.
Hello.
We're not talking about a movie tonight specifically, although we'll probably mention a bunch of them. We are talking about the future of physical media, because that is not just something that's really important to us as like the video store guys, but it's something that is a constant source of conversation recently, with streaming essentially collapsing, but then the industry doubling down and being like, nah, we don't need all that extra money from DVD.
Yeah, totally. We're just gonna forget all the people that want it, and also like for some reason, yeah. Anyway, we'll get into it, but yeah.
Yeah. So Zach picked out a handful of curated articles that we're going to respond to a little bit. I will say I will at least acknowledge an article that we previously talked about, which was that earlier this year there was a report that came out, and I will have to link it in the description of the YouTube video, but where basically the short version is 2023 had the most disc releases of any year ever.
Yeah.
But 2/3 of them were basically bootlegs.
Yeah.
Because the studios were just not releasing stuff, but there was still demand. And so there's all these people on the internet setting up Etsy stores to just be like, okay, I guess I'll sell Grease, Rise of the Pink Ladies. That's fine.
Yeah, it's so weird. I mean, obviously, like, you know, we'll touch upon this with everything else, but like it's perplexing that, again, I mean, it's weird because it's like the exact opposite of what happened. I don't know how many years ago, maybe 15, 20 years ago, when you know, basically piracy was you know, happening, and there was LimeWire and all those other sites, and people were downloading films and you know, everything under the sun you could download, and people were just like, let me just download this film, like have the film come out, and then like whatever time period, let me download it so it can put it on my computers. I can burn a disc, I can do whatever. And they just refused, and they, you know, I don't know, I think that obviously what the studios and everything were complaining about when they were talking about like numbers, just like, you won't pirate a car, you'll pirate, you know, you wouldn't steal a car, you'll pirate. But they obviously exaggerated those numbers beyond human comprehension, especially considering most of those people, or maybe not most, but a lot of people, of those people had already either watched the film, consumed the film in some way, shape, and form, that they paid for it. And then just were like, no, I just want it so that I can watch it anytime, in the way that like Netflix, and basically Netflix changed that game, and kind of, I think that like kind of killed that off for a lot of people, because they were like, look, I'll pay for it. I'm happy to pay for it, which is me, which is you. Like, we're happy to pay for that service. I would actually rather pay for it, because I do know how the studio system works, and that like, fuck the goddamn, the only studio that immediately came to mind is a studio that I will not mention because of employment things. Not for me, but and I was just like, well, fuck, not that one.
I mean, they at one point they were basically kissing cousins with Blockbuster. So
yeah, no, but I mean, that was just a humorous thing in my head, where I'm like, 20th Century Fox is actually Disney, and I'm like, all these other studios, it's just one. Fuck Disney. So we can say that pretty easily. But until we're all working for Disney eventually, in the Disney slave in the slave mines that happen eventually. But we all just wanted to, you know, consume the media that we wanted, and then they figured out a way. It was like, oh, we can profitize it, and that was great for about 15 minutes. And then we kind of realized, oh crap, which is something I think that we said like maybe 5 years ago. We did a podcast kind of on this similar topic, and where it was just like, it's just going to become cable, like new, like just the way it was, you know, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, where we're paying for a dozen different things. I think I pay because I'm the person that like does things for different parts of my family, where it's just it's same thing with you. Like, although I'm having the problem because I have extended, like my family's all over the place, and so like Disney is starting to do the whole like, oh, we might crack down on passwords, which I'm just like, that's gonna be hell. But you know, it's like I have Disney, like I have Apple Plus for my aunt, and Paramount for my, or not Paramount, for Peacock for my aunt. Those two that she's like, don't ever get rid of those. And then I got Netflix because I'm writing an article and I had to do a couple stories, and then she got back I'm like,
Yeah.
and suddenly I was like, I deleted a whole bunch of things because I was just like, I can't afford this. I'm pumping this out every month.
Yeah.
And also it was like one of those things that was really bothering me because I'm like, I do want to start buying things on since I do want to support the fact when they do come out with
Right.
physical media, I want to make sure I buy it like opening day so that those numbers show up and that it continues
Yeah.
on. But I'm just like, I'm spending $60 a month. I never spent that much money on cable. They
No,
got me. They did it.
that's how I feel too. Like I really, and again, this is not exactly groundbreaking
Yeah.
stuff, but like yeah, I feel like I'm spending more on the collective mass of
Yeah.
individual streaming services than I
Yeah.
ever spent on cable.
Yeah.
Uh,
And yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm not getting the same. Yes, there's some element of convenience to the fact that like you don't have to wait and DVR something,
Yeah.
but like I also feel like I'm just not getting the same value from it that I was getting when
Oh,
everything was
certainly
all in
not.
one. So,
Yeah. No, I
but
mean,
so
yeah, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna jump into the articles that you shared.
Yeah, the first one, I don't think I had it on the list immediately because I don't think that we've ever talked about it. I was a huge fan. I forget, I think you were probably too, a huge fan of Netflix's originally the OG Netflix, which was the
Yeah,
DVD rental business where they actually mailed out discs. I never understood on how they actually like did any sort of actual financial business on it. But
yeah,
obviously somebody there, Rex or whatever, was it Rex Chapman? No, it's not Rex Chapman. That's actually a guy on Twitter. The CEO obviously
Reed
had some sort of,
Hastings.
what's that?
Reed Hastings.
Oh yeah, Reed. I don't know why I was thinking Rex. But had some sort of long-term plan going there because it
Mhm.
was, obviously it worked out well for him and the whole and Netflix in general. But like
Yeah,
they just shuttered their DVD rental business, unfortunately,
yeah,
which is something that I had actually almost like I would say like a couple months ago, I've been like, you know what? I probably should like sign up for that again and see because it was DVD. They changed it to
yeah,
DVD.com
yeah.
and I was thinking, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I want to start doing this again, just
Mhm.
because there is a lot of stuff that isn't available for streaming, but is available on
Right.
DVD. And they had a crazy collection. Like I remember, like maybe
Yeah,
I would think probably like 10 years ago was the last time I was a subscriber to it. I just wasn't able to because I moved so much that it didn't make any sense. Like I would have a disc
I
sitting at home for like 3 months and
was
be like,
I was a subscriber intermittently up until 2022. I actually, I I bailed last holiday season because I realized that I was in the middle of It's Gary Shandling's show,
nice.
and that I was just like, not only was it like a 20 disc endeavor and I was on like disc 4, but also that they were sitting around for way too long, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm never gonna get through the show, let alone anything else on my list. And so
Yeah.
I put it on hiatus,
Yeah.
and then the next thing I heard was that it was ending.
Yeah. I think that they did a genius thing, which is like it was like the complete opposite of what Blockbuster did, which is charge you for not leaving. But then they realized for us it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They could sit on it and we'll make more money. I mean, they made more money off of me than probably most people because I had like the
Oh
three
yeah,
disc. Like I didn't find it worth it unless it was like 2 or 3 disc. Like one disc was
yeah, for
just too much
sure.
work. And so I had like the three. So I would have like three sitting down for a month and a half or something like that before I'm like,
Mm,
oh, God damn it, I missed. I
yeah,
like forgot to return this one, and then do it again, and literally never watch any of them because it would just be like, okay, it's there, I can watch it when I want. Which is actually one of the problems with physical media. The kind of only one of the only problems with physical media
yeah,
for me is I have a whole bunch of discs that I purchased. And they still have the cellophane wrapper on them because
yeah,
it's just like I know I can watch it anytime. I have 2 copies of the Homicide Life on the
yeah,
Streets entire set because I bought one ages ago and my aunt, who knows I love the show, bought another one. But like it's just like, no, I'm gonna make it special. Like I'm gonna like
yeah,
watch it and we've been planning for years to do some sort of like
yeah,
podcast on it. But then we realized kind of, well, it's not available on streaming. No one has watched it in 23
yeah,
years.
yeah.
And so like not quite sure what the audience
Definition of something
is.
we would be doing just for us. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not even like the Clerks animated series, like, like type of thing, like where it's just like,
yeah,
yeah, but yeah, that
yeah.
the
The
yeah.
the end of
But
DVD.com is kind of frustrating, not just because like it represents the end of an era, but also
no.
um, Chicken Soup for the Soul, who owns Redbox,
Yeah.
had tried to purchase their inventory and was
Yeah.
basically like, "We'll do this thing,"
Yeah.
and Netflix like rejected it more than once, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's just like, okay, so the answer here is we don't want to put it at we don't want to give anybody else the opportunity to succeed
Yeah.
where we failed,
Yeah.
and
I mean, that's
so
just like, I mean, that's the kind of horrible thing about venture capitalism the way it is that
yeah,
like a lot of times what it does, I mean, we've seen it with Facebook, we've seen it with Google. You go, oh,
yeah,
somebody else is potentially doing it better than us. If we decide not to do it, like that's the biggest thing about Google that always drives me nuts is like
yeah,
they'll buy a company just to close them so that they
right,
don't have to compete in that business. And it's
yeah,
just like that that's I mean like that to me is like that defines capitalism as a
oh
thing,
yeah,
but it is also like it is that is very specifically, if you talk to a libertarian, you talk to anybody, like that is very specifically not supposed to happen in
yeah,
capitalism.
except that it happens every single time
Yeah,
for all
yeah,
forever and always, yeah. um
yeah.
but yeah, the and again, like it is slightly different, like trying to close up businesses versus like saying, no, we're not going to sell you our assets.
Yeah.
But like it does feel like on some level Netflix is like, no, there's still a market for this, we just don't know how to tap it,
Yeah,
so we're
yeah.
not going to
Or
let
we just
somebody
don't
else.
want, I mean, I think one of the biggest things is that like it's just kind of outside of it's like you have these weird God, I'm trying to remember what the company is that like they make like motorcycle, I mean like different companies have these
Yeah,
insanely wide-reaching things. It's going to come to me. There's a company that makes basically like missiles and also like bicycles like and oh, ball. The
oh
jars
yeah, yeah, yeah,
they make. I forget what they make. I think that they do something with missile technology, but they also make the glass jars. It's the same
yeah,
company somehow, but it's just like at some point they would probably go, "Do we need the jars or so,
yeah.
whatever?" It's like
Well, and
I
that's
think yeah,
actually that's a really interesting thing, because with going back to the report I was talking about how so many people are making bootlegs now.
yeah,
Um, I do think that there is a fundamental difference between there is a demand in the market
mhm,
and there is a sufficient demand in the market to make massive corporations happy with the money they could make off
yeah,
it. And so, like, I think that's part of the reason that, like, when you see this enormous number of people who are just openly like selling bootlegs, whether it's like collectible VHS tapes or whether
mhm,
it's actual like practical discs, the studios are not stopping them for the most part.
yeah,
And
yeah.
that to me just indicates that it's like, no, it would cost more in legal fees to fight this than we think we are losing by letting somebody just sell bootlegs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that I forget whether I mean you would know this better than me if they Warner Brothers used to do for their back catalog, right? Like an on-demand DVD service.
Yeah, they
Are they
still
still
have
doing
Warner
that?
Archive, and it skews heavily towards stuff that's never been widely commercially
Yeah.
released.
I just
But
I that's something that I just don't understand. Like especially for it obviously like we want people like us
yeah,
want like oh we want the 3 disc set which like something we'll
yeah,
get to which is completely off the wall insane but like we want the 3 disc set of this random film and it has extras and it has all this other stuff
right,
and it has like a movie poster you pull out. I love that stuff. Rarely can afford it but I love that stuff.
right,
And but there are certain films where I'm just like no like it'd actually be really fun to have like there's like certain it's something on Turner Classic Movies or whatever that's weirdly not, on a Blu-ray. Um, but like I just want a copy of that so I can watch it again
right,
or just have it or give it as a like give it as a gift and do things like that. And like I would pay $40 for that just to be
yeah.
able to have it when it's not available, to have like a nice, a nice copy that isn't just me like finding a download of this relatively esoteric
Yeah.
1947 film from Cary Grant or
Well, and I
something.
mean, a good example is Zero Effect.
Yeah.
Zero Effect is no longer in print as a standard movie, but you can get it through the Warner Archive as a print-on-demand title.
Wow.
And so, like, that's a movie that you and I have evangelized
Yeah.
to hundreds of people probably over the years.
Mhm.
And
I mean, I would
like,
think thousands, but I mean, at this point, it
yeah,
would be,
I
yeah.
mean, and it's also kind of a weird niche because Amazon has a deal now with Warner Archive, so you can go to
Yeah.
Amazon and get Zero Effect it's going to take like 10 to 14 days because they have to print it.
Mhm.
But like to most people, they don't realize that this is a print on demand title because they're
Yeah.
buying it from Amazon.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
like,
yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of, increasingly you're getting weirdly mainstream stuff that's showing up exclusively as print on demand, and I like that. I actually don't
Mhm.
like, I think that if you can't make a sufficient profit to make your paymasters happy,
Yeah.
like that's a great middle ground to offer
Yeah.
that, the last few seasons of Black Lightning, which was a show that I really enjoyed and that I covered for work,
Great show.
you can get the DVDs at Target, but you can only get the Blu-ray on Warner Archive because there was not enough of a margin in Blu-ray
Okay.
for them to justify making 125,000 of them.
Yeah.
And so they're just like, okay, well, for the handful of people who care, yeah, you can get the high quality disc like for $40 on our this one website.
Yeah. No, that would be, yeah. There's, it's yeah, it would be great if all the studios did that, because I mean, especially when it comes to, I mean, obviously you come into the problems with the, one of the reasons I think that probably Homicide has never gotten a Blu-ray or never been on streaming again is that like the music rights, there's half the, I mean, one of the other issues too is that the show is always a save the show kind of show. Every, like after the first, I think 5 or 6 seasons, it was like fans need to come together to save the show, and it lasted not, I think what did they were 7 seasons, and so, and a movie. Yeah. Oh damn. Okay, yeah, I forgot we got a movie too. But it didn't last. It had so many actors in it that are now monster blockbusters and stars and stuff like that. You would think that it would do it, but also it's not. It ends up being not a profitable thing. Never mind, I think it's always one of those, like, I think they actually promoted it in any way, shape, and form, be like, hey, this is The Wire before The Wire. But
was it shot on video or was it shot on film?
I don't know that.
I know a lot of stuff during that time was shot on video, and that complicates like the music rights stuff because it's so much harder to separate a soundtrack on tape.
Yeah.
Although Homicide, because of its look and it's like it doesn't feel like a thing that would have been shot on video.
Yeah, but it was a like a handheld like movement thing. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm trying to picture. I'm like realizing that I haven't watched it on like a flat screen TV ever. So like I don't know. Like the only thing I've watched it on is an old Zenith, from 20 years ago or whatever. I'm also vaguely terrified that like any of those shows, you're like, oh, this is my favorite show ever, and then I finally go back and watch it, and you're like, doesn't stand up as much as I thought it did.
I stand by Cheers as being a great show, but like the Sam and Diane relationship does not hold up to modern standards. Like,
I mean, like
physical abuse alone.
Yeah, I'm comfortable saying that the show itself is like an overall arc, in the same way you can say Cheers or any number of Family Ties or anything like that. Any of those shows are great TV shows, especially of the era that they're in. But individual shows, whether or not like every episode, the way that like I remember it, like watching it as a teenager, does every episode just be like, holy crap, this was the best show ever. I have no one else to talk about this because no one else is watching when they're 17 years old watching Homicide: Life on the Streets. Like on a Friday night.
There's a graphic novel out now. So.
What's that?
I said there is a graphic novel out now.
I know, which is weird. It's based on the book, right? I'm trying to remember. We had this discussion. Yeah. But anyway, so this is the weird twist with the Netflix thing, is that Netflix is article in Variety. Netflix is planning to open its own permanent, which is the big thing for me. It's the permanent retail outlets, because like there's been a show like right now, if you're in Utica, you can go to Moe's Tavern. I guess they have it like, which it's like kind of it's basically the same premise as if you go to Universal Studios in Florida. They have Moe's Tavern, they have the Simpsons World or whatever it's called. But they're having like kind of drop-in things, which like Kevin Smith has done that. I know that oh my god, the Taco Bell one, you went to it.
The Demolition Man.
Yeah. They've done it, but like according to this is, which I guess they think they have enough shows that are enough products or whatever that they're going to basically, which is weird considering they like sold off a thing. They sold off their DVD line. So
Yeah.
physical media is kind of out. They don't release. It's very rare that they release a show on DVD unless it's House of Cards.
Typically
Or,
it's like it's only when the creators absolutely insist, and
yeah,
so it's
yeah,
like,
or
well,
it's just something so monster that, like, I think House of Cards, I think they were very correct in the fact that, especially considering it was still, there's still
yeah,
very much a physical media
yeah,
thing. They also had their DVD end of things, so they did have to do physical media for their things. They're missing out on a
yeah,
market. It had that
and
audience that was older.
the Scorsese stuff they release because it goes straight to the Criterion edition now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, which, I mean,
Um,
makes sense. I'm not criticizing that necessarily, but it is kind of like Criterion used to be a thing where you had like the movie itself had to be great, not just the filmmaker.
yeah, 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 yeah. It has been kind of depressing to watch. I mean, like, I'm happy to get certain films. Like, I mean, fuck,
Yeah,
I still, at some point I need to break down and buy The Rock, because like it's a super fun film and a great film. And if
yeah,
you're gonna have a copy of The Rock, you want to have the Criterion, which is always was wild that Criterion has
yeah,
Criterion The Rock, but like not, I don't know, Oh Lucky Man, or whatever,
yeah, exactly.
I know that's me, but like, but the okay, this is from the Variety. The permanent stores represent a logical evolution and for Netflix's steady retail expansion. Anyway, um, like,
I mean,
not
I guess
logical to
because
me.
they have big deals with Hot Topic and stuff, but
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, they're gonna have a Netflix Bites, a restaurant in LA this summer, and ticketed experiences like the Queen's Ball, a Bridgerton experience, and the Stranger Things experience. And then of course, which like I still can't fucking believe, is they're gonna have an immersive experience, I guess, to go along with the reality show that they're doing of the Squid Game.
oh
Which to
yeah,
me, I just, like, as a society, I just can't believe that we've. I mean, I can believe. What am I talking about? That's not a those thing, but yeah, they're also going to have tie-ins with other stuff. So I mean, like, they definitely will have like the product there because they have t-shirts or whatever. I mean, but it is, and of course this is going to be LA, New York, maybe Chicago, maybe something like that. And it's
yeah.
not going to be in Syracuse. It's not going to be in Norfolk, but which
No, the
is
fact that
always,
the Simpsons thing's in Utica just shocks me.
it's a traveling thing, so I think they like
Yeah,
break it down and then go somewhere else during, and it's specifically like during, it was specifically, at least basically, for some reason I'm getting a ton of Facebook ads for it. It's like specifically kind of oriented towards the Halloween, because Simpsons and Halloween kind of go a lot hand in hand. But yeah, no, I I just got a picture, like, very specific studios starting to have like an A24 store, which
yeah.
actually I totally would go to. Like,
Oh yeah, for
I mean,
sure.
which they do. It has been really interesting to watch, like A24, which, like, I keep missing the
Yeah,
deal, like the different things they have, or either not having money when they come out with the things.
yeah,
But like, they have come out with like all these random products that usually you'd have to like go to Etsy for or something like that
yeah,
to find, like the hot dog fingers for
yeah.
yeah, and
Also, there was they for Black Lives Matter charities or something. I can't remember what it was, but whatever it was like a topical charity,
mhm.
and they sold off a bunch of original props from Everything Everywhere.
Oh, nice. Nice. It is interesting to see with, like, because I mean, like, we mourn the loss of Mondo.
Yeah,
And then at the same time, like, Mondo went away, and then immediately basically A24 has its own store. You have a bunch of different movie, like, not even just movies, but like studios and stuff like that having
yeah.
very specific stores, which, like, fuck it, I'm all about. Um but yeah, that's
And I mean, Mondo
a
still
weird thing.
exists, in the sense that like they still have their record label, they still have their toys.
Mhm.
Um, they're never going to completely go away because Funko owns them now, so like you're always going to have prestige format toys through there. But
Yeah.
yeah, they're like poster division. I'm curious to see whether Moshe Fique, who had like worked at their record label for a long time and used to be their head,
Mhm.
he and a bunch of other people who've been working with the record label for a while left around the same time that Funko bought out the company.
Mhm.
And I'm like, is this like quitting to avoid being laid off, or are you guys going to start like a competing thing? Because I
Yeah.
would 100% back those guys play if they did that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna move one story around so it's not in
Yeah,
order, but comicbook.com site that is, occasionally we hear from,
Yeah.
is reporting Walmart reportedly discontinuing physical games in 2024. It's not all games, but it's going to be getting rid of Xbox games next year, which I'm really curious on this end of things on whether how much this is not the stores focused, but the game studios and companies saying we want to get rid of physical media because obviously we want all of the fucking money. Because obviously, like if you're Xbox and like 80% of your sales, I'm guessing, come on
digital now. Yeah.
You're digital, like, I would just want to get rid of that completely because then you control everything.
There's an element of that I'll talk about in another one of these stories coming up soon too.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, gaming,
it's gonna be interesting to see how Walmart tackles the end of like doing their physical stuff, because like Walmart is one of the only major places where you go and there's still like a bay of cheap garbage PC games.
Yeah.
Because like they know who their like customer base is.
Yeah,
and, like
yeah.
they have people who don't want to spend $80 for a AAA game.
Or I mean, it's I mean, it's the same thing with I mean, in the same story it mentions, Target has gotten rid of a lot of their digital stuff. I mean, Target is getting, I guess this also ties into a story that we which is a story that I skipped, but we're going back to, which is, Target is going to get rid of their, or I'm sorry, not Target. It was Best Buy is going to get rid of their DVDs within store, which, like, mind you, like half the stores I've been into have like 2 shelves, like very at this little. Point, a very small Best selection.
Best Buy is the one that I wanted to talk a little bit about, because I feel so. Best Buy deciding to abandon the physical media space, I think, is a bigger story in a lot of ways than people are going to think.
Yeah.
Because first of all, Best Buy was one of the last best places where catalog titles that aren't like evergreen hits, would still play.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Walmart and Target are going to have Home Alone and Halloween and whatever else because of seasonal end caps.
Mm-hmm.
But at Best Buy, they were doing those prestige format, like steelbook things.
Yeah.
And you would get stuff like the Limey or the first couple of, the new Expendables movie came out, and the first 3 movies all came out in a box set.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this is just straight profit for the studios, because you've got something where they can justify a unit price of $35.
Also, a lot of those things were exclusives for Best Buy, which was also very weird to me that they're getting rid of it. I wonder, though, I doubt that they're getting rid of it online. I bet it's just in stores.
They are, according to their statement.
Online?
And this is what's interesting to me. And this is why I think it's a bigger deal. 2 things. First of all, I think that it's indicative of problems at Best Buy generally. Like, my guess is that they're like, okay, this is a profit center, but the margin is still small. And we are struggling enough as a company that we're worried about when the music stops being stuck with $1 billion worth of plastic discs that we can't get rid of.
Fair.
Yeah. And so that, to me, like, the biggest thing I took away from that is like, I feel like that's a real good indication that Best Buy is in trouble. That they, as a company, don't want something that has been reliably profitable, but modestly profitable. They want to focus on stuff that is bigger margin, but anything in their space that's high margin is also high risk. And so to me, it reads as like, this is not great news for them as much. And it's also not great news for physical media. And it's also not great news for the studios, because again, the studios are making really nice profits off of like repackaging 30-year-old movies in prestige format box sets.
I wonder if they, because I mean, like, Best Buy, as a former Best Buy employee for a brief time period, we had a really the one in DeWitt, the one in Syracuse area. I guess it is the Syracuse store now. Because the one in the big one in the mall went away, and it's just one in a suburb of Syracuse, which has always been odd. They had a very small corner in the back, and it was kind of like a lost concern to some level, even though it was just one of those, I'm like, the profit, I mean, it's not like a hard drive, it's not like $150 whatever thing that for some reason people would always steal hard drives very successfully. Like, I have no idea. I got yelled at because, anyway, it was the whole thing. those goddamn security things they put on, and I guess I didn't put them on right. But anyway, but still they have like a huge, thing at the front of the store. To me, it was always a reason. It's one of the few reasons I go into, I would physically go into Best Buy.
Yeah.
Handful of times, oh, there's a new product that I want to actually have my hands on. But like Best Buy doesn't
Right.
have cameras for the most part, especially now that they got rid of the big store in Syracuse, in Destiny, USA.
Yeah.
But it was at least something that I'm like, oh, I can walk in, look at, grab, and walk out.
Yeah.
And I have it, which is like, I don't really, I don't know. It's one of those, like, it's kind of like a book as well. Like if I want to buy a book,
Yeah.
physical book, I usually go to Barnes and Noble to buy it, because the price isn't usually that dramatically different, because I want to physically have it, and getting it shipped is never, it's not the excitement. Unless it's something, like Arrow Video, where you're not going to find them in any store anywhere.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, I want to get the special edition of Tremors, but not that special edition, the other special edition, the one that's like higher end special edition. Do you
Yeah, the
have
one
that
that
in a
has
random
the
Best Buy store?
poster and the
Yeah. You're not going to have that, unfortunately. But it is shocking that, like, so it's like, if Walmart certainly, but one last thing on Best Buy, one thing that I do actually wonder about Best Buy is they get rid of DVDs. What are they filling their stores with? I mean, like,
well,
because I mean, like, I've been in a lot of
the
stores, like in Atlanta, where it seems for some reason, like, obviously I spent a lot of time in Atlanta working on film, and I had to go to Best Buy to pick up hard drives. It was just, the only place in town. They don't have, weirdly, for
right.
a production town, they don't have a place like B&H, or
Yeah.
which is kind of surprising. But you go in there, and they actually do have like they would have like two lines, like kind of what Syracuse had 10 years ago. They would have kind of that level stuff in a couple of the stores. And so it's very interesting to me what they're going to have in a lot of these stores if they start getting rid of their physical media. They've limited the amount of products that are out, like the number of hard drives, and just like things like that. And it's just, I do wonder if they are having like a downsizing, because I mean, the problem is that they're stuck with these huge locations, which is a whole different story for a different type of podcast.
Yeah,
Um,
there was that story a while back when Bed Bath and Beyond was going out. Somebody
yeah,
wrote an article that was like, "Who killed the category killers?"
yeah, yeah,
Talking about the way that these companies often make the same handful of mistakes, and I do think Best Buy falls into that a little bit. I was in one fairly recently. Ironically, I was lured into Best Buy because they were a place that had MP3 players available.
yeah,
Um, because I bought one for my child who I refused to get a phone for because she's not old enough to need a phone.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And there's not any
and
other options,
so
which is, it's tough. Yeah,
yeah, so I got her an MP3 player, and when I was there, like, they don't have any DVDs at
mhm,
the store in DeWitt, as far as I can tell anymore.
mm,
Um, they have decided they're gonna. It's funny because, like, Walmart has committed, and Warner Brothers has a deal with Walmart, I think, and both of them have committed to staying in the DVD market for another few years at least.
yeah,
And they are abandoning games, and Best Buy went the opposite way. They're abandoning movies and keeping games in store.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, I will say they do a decent business on the games. Like,
yeah.
I think I had to help two customers over the entire 3 months that I worked at Best Buy. I was a seasonal employee,
Mhm.
on movies, and it was like, even though it was a completely different section than mine, it was continually, people were looking for discs, and obviously we had to have things in the back, and it was
Yeah.
a whole thing. And I still, as somebody who does not is not a gamer, I still can't put my head around like some of the amount of money that they were spending on games. But
Oh,
that's a different story. Especially for like a
well,
kid's game. Like, I can't imagine
that's
like asking my mom for a $75
yeah.
single game that is not, like, I don't know, like, it's such a weird thing for my like handheld player. Anyway, that's the different thing. But
But
um,
one of the things
yeah,
what I was kind of alluding to is that there's an element of Best Buy right now that feels like it has that, like, ghost town feel
yeah,
of, like, Kmart in the last few years,
yeah,
where it's like the answer to your question of, like, what are they going to do with that space
mhm,
is that they're just spreading things out.
Yeah.
And that might be aesthetically more pleasing if you're really in that minimalist thing. But like for a big box retail store, having a bunch of like spaced out things that look it
Yeah.
just feels like, oh, this is a place in distress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
It'll be interesting because I mean, like, there certainly was, I think that what they'll probably end up doing as well, is starting to shift what they sell more. They
yeah,
they did a decent business on. I mean, I don't know what the profit margin is on like appliances, but they certainly did a different thing on that. The one thing I will say is that as somebody who has bought a bunch of stuff, I still continue to buy quite a bit at Best Buy. Um,
mhm,
I almost every time I go in, I know what I already bought, and it is I buy it before I get there. And
right.
so I just go in and pick it up. And like my that certainly had a lot of business when I was there at Best Buy. Was a lot of it was people already ordered, picked it up, and it's just they're in the store for 5 minutes and out. No one else is like it doesn't.
It's
I
just a
think that
way to
they're
avoid paying delivery fees and waiting 3 days to get
yeah, yeah,
something.
exactly. You can have somebody, have somebody in the store do it in an hour and do it. And those guys were constantly working their asses off
Yeah.
in the store, constantly fulfilling those orders. And the one thing I will say that I think is a stupid move, which is mind you, Target hasn't done it has done it as well. It's just they put it right up at the front of the store. They don't make you walk through any of the store, which is something that
Yeah.
Walmart used to do for a while. And I wonder if they, which they've stopped, as far as I can tell. Anytime I've had to pick up, unfortunately, something at Walmart, which is always a just annoying process.
Yeah.
Compared to Target and compared to Best Buy as well. Like it's just, I don't understand what Walmart's issue is, but it is a problem. But we're already talking. This is not the Best Buy podcast. That is for a different time. The Why don't we talk about we can talk about the story that was in IGN. I know you didn't have a chance to check this out too much, but like I can pull the one big thing
Yeah.
from it. Where is there it is. It is the title is the digital only era is here and I'm ready for it. um Not shockingly, it's entertainment media, so the title is a little bit of a like
Yeah.
a tease to get people to be like ah. um the
Well, and
quote that
IGN still it owes a lot to its time as like a gaming exclusive site,
yeah.
and so even if they do a lot more now and they're much broader, they
Mhm.
still appeal to that audience. And
Yeah,
as you
yeah,
kind of alluded to, like games have gone all digital much faster than movies have because of DLCs.
yeah, yeah. Gaming is what porn used to be when it comes to
Yeah.
the advent of media. But which remind Actually, wait, that doesn't remind me. Sorry, weird. I'm not going to do that segue. Because I was going to say I have a box of VHS tapes that we should go through at some point. None of them are porn. They're just old tapes that my aunt gave me. That makes it sound worse. I'll explain. No, I won't. Anyway, but um, the digital era is here and I'm ready for it. And this is the pull quote that I kind of that I thought kind of thing. But rather than lament its passing, it helped clarify my priorities. Which games do I want to own, and which games do I want to own physically? This kind of thinking makes the games I do go out and purchase physical editions of that much more special. And my collection of physical media isn't just stuff I like, but stuff I love. Which, like I said, like it's kind of a tease. Like he does spend quite a bit of
Yeah.
time kind of going,
Hmm.
why, whatever. And then like the last couple paragraphs is kind of that, which I think we can all kind of agree with. I definitely both of our DVD collections are kind of bloated by back in the day when you could just go into Wegmans, a grocery
Yeah.
store, and buy like half of my DVDs. I noticed they have like a Wegmans sticker on it because you could buy like 3 for $5. Like they had all these different kind of deals, and it was just like I
Well,
own I own like Triple X Vin Diesel's action film on disc, and I'm like, I've watched it more times than I would like to actually admit publicly.
I mean,
But like, yeah.
I I recently, a friend of mine, Ryan Zlomek, who worked briefly at Emerald City,
Mhm.
had come to me with like these four gigantic boxes of VHS tapes.
Yeah.
And it was basically like, hey, you like VHS. Do you want to figure out what to do with these? And so I have this enormous VHS collection, a lot of which is nothing I would ever watch again.
Mhm.
And like part of my priority right now is like putting them up on the VHS subreddit, putting them on eBay, and like basically whittling it down to stuff that I actually care about and would
Yeah.
and want to own on tape. And even then, I sometimes look at my pile of like the things I want to keep, and I'm like, this is bigger than it needs to be. Like
Yeah.
most of
Yeah.
this stuff is also on disc. I don't know why I like some of the things are just to amuse myself.
Yeah.
I have a copy of Jerry Maguire. Um,
Yeah.
and it's just because there's that one guy out there who wants to own every Jerry Maguire.
I'd be like, I want the last one.
And so like, yeah, I think every VHS collector has Jerry Maguire because they're just like, no, it's funny that that guy can't have mine.
That's kind of especially evil from one collector to another.
Yeah.
It is like there's a couple films that like I've decided for some reason, which was stupid immediately, because the first one that I picked was a film that the beta version is astronomically expensive. Is that I was like, you know what? One of my favorite films of all time is The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. And I want to own every version of it. Just for some reason. I'm not quite sure why, like as in like a weird whatever. And then immediately go on eBay and the beta is like, you can't find a beta copy of it for like less than $300.
Yeah.
And I was,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
I get that. Somebody in the documentary Wolfman's Got Nards has a collection of like every international version of the Monster Squad.
Yes.
And I was like, that's a cool idea. I should get a couple of those. Like, and then I looked and I'm like, no, because the amount of money that you pay for like a Japanese version of the Monster Squad is enough that I could buy like a movie prop from something else.
Yeah. I collect movie posters, and I have a not a vast collection, but a decent collection of films that nothing's worth any money, because the films that I like aren't films that go anywhere, like have that sort of thing. And also the films that I like that I would own nice posters of are way out of my budget from years ago, and like I will never own a poster for Citizen Kane. I will never own a poster for Z or 8.5 or anything like that, but they're like, I did start to get into realizing, because I'm trying to remember which film I have a foreign, I think, Oh Lucky Man, I have a couple different versions of the posters. And then I was just like, oh, this is a great idea. Is like, I can't I'll never be able to afford Citizen Kane. I'll never be able to afford like certain films from the 60s and 50s that I love. But I can get like the Ukrainian version or something, whatever, like the Indian version of it. And those are also usually some off the wall fucking posters that are really awesome. And the problem is about the same time as I thought about that, basically that other people who collect movie posters were like, whoa, like, yeah, let's do that. Oh, that's the way that I could do that too. Also, they look really cool and often are way better than the really boring like 50s and 60s versions of like popular films from Hollywood in that time period. And so like, yeah, basically that kind of got killed too. And I'm like, they're still not as expensive. Like you can still like on eBay get like not Citizen, only, but like Bullet or something like that. You can get like an Indian version of the Bullet, for Bullet, and it'll be $250 as opposed to $3,000 or something for those posters. But yeah, the trying to find the next. Let's because I think it's a good thing. There's this great in the Huron Daily Tribune from Michigan. Why actually weirdly came out yesterday. Why buy physical media whenever possible? I don't know why local news places do this weird thing where they pull a file photo of the op-ed writer, and it's usually this like awkward image of like somebody up against a white wall, like a mugshot. Like, oh dear God, local news, you need better photojournalists. But it is it's basically kind of talking about how if you own the physical copy of a thing, they can't change it, and they can't remove it, and they can't do it. Obviously, we've talked about like The Princess. We interviewed those the writers from that show or from that movie that Hulu just pulled off and disappeared. Like some very again, like these I think the problems that we have for a lot of movies aren't going to be censorship. Like, I am not
Right.
at all in any way, shape, and form concerned about like them changing Roald Dahl. I'm not concerned about Mark Twain and that sort of thing. Not only because there will always be, I promise you, always be copies that are the full versions that are whatever, but also as somebody who read many books that were above my like supposed reading level for long on, there are the copies of books that you get for the most part that are like the young adult section are abridged versions to begin with. Like I realized like too late that a lot of like, oh, I read this Mark Twain, book, and then I actually see the copy of the book and it's like 200 pages more, and I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I read like a 35, like a 60-page version of that and realized I never actually read it because the version that was in this cheap paperback or whatever that was, sold at Scholastic, which is actually a story we should talk about for mention, but is it wasn't the actual book. And so this idea that this new woke culture or whatever thing, but let me read the quotes from it. Physical books and media are something protected not only by law but by history. Government seizures of physical property, especially books, are forever associated with regimes like Nazi Germany and Stalinist Russia, to the point where any attempt by the government or any or powerful group to take them would immediately be met with hostility, even if one political party or another didn't agree with what it had to say. On the internet, however, if somebody wants to edit a Wikipedia article or change someone's name in the credits of a movie, like they did with Elliot Page's name on the Netflix in the credits of Inception, they don't have to take anything. They just have to quietly alter it and and nobody will be able to do a thing about it. It won't be seen as totalitarian or taking away people's freedoms or rewriting history. It's kind of odd. Like I picked this because it's a mixture of like, yes, I agree with them. I do think that they possibly are going with a different route as well. In the kind of like, this is just even mentioning Elliot Page because it is a conversation. It is something that like I think we can, I don't want to say we can come together on, but about like the importance of physical media. But it is something that like it's the fact that this type of article is coming from this angle and able to make those kind of discussions is kind of reiterates how this is something that both like the left and the right are going to believe that why physical media is important, and it is in a lot of ways it is forever. Obviously to a certain extent, obviously DVD players will eventually become harder to find and harder to fix and whatever, just like VHS or Betamax players. But it is something that like it is the permanent version, and it is something we can save. I don't know. Do you have thoughts?
No, I agree, and I do like. Obviously, there are a lot of things over the years that have been not necessarily censored, but have become lost media, and are only rediscovered and available to the public because of like somebody's off-air recordings. And that can go for something that's as innocuous as like, oh, this show never made money, so we just never put it out, or something that's as kind of intentional and kind of like deliberate as the Star Wars holiday special where they tried to like bury it from existence. And so I do like there's definitely an element of truth to this that like physical media helps you keep something in the universe, again going back to Star Wars, like the reason that we have the specialized in air quotes versions of the original trilogy where it represents more or less what you saw in theaters is because people who had the early VHS tapes have like upscaled them and put them on the internet and like sold them as DVDs. And so, there's an element of, there's a long history of people using their own tape player to keep something from disappearing out of existence. I do think it's like you said, it's like, it's a little bit weird that your go-to example is like, man, it'd be really cool if I could just dead name Elliot Page.
But, I mean, mind you, like I will full thing. I quickly read this, skimmed it, and then now that I'm reading it, once again,
Yeah.
which is this is, I will admit, bad prep for me. Rereading, it's like you can kind of skim something and then like think you understand it, and then starting to like read things like it's like, I don't really care for the original Disney's original animated Mulan. However, I believe that both ran a risk of being completely taken off the market sometime in the future. And I'm like, I do not believe in any way, shape, and form that Mulan will ever be taken off thing. I mean,
No.
what the problem is, which is one of those interesting, this actually becomes like a better citation in so much as the misunderstanding of why physical media is important.
Yeah.
Now that I've talked this out a bit more. But it's the fact that like, it is because Disney will remove it from the streaming services, which like, if Encanto goes away, if they decide, oh, Encanto they're not going to remove it because it's not the right version of woke necessarily.
Right.
They'll remove it because it's not a profit margin like the Princess or whatever, or if it's something they'll just put it in the vault.
Disney has a long history of the
Yeah.
Disney Vault, where they use scarcity to provoke like a sales rush.
Yeah.
And so it would not surprise me. And now that they've essentially let all the other contracts lapse and everything's just on Disney Plus and they're not licensing to anybody else, it's like, oh yeah, you could just make stuff disappear for 3 years, and then when it comes back, there'll be a gold rush, and people will sign up for Disney Plus who haven't been on in a while because there'll be a narrative around it.
Yeah.
And there is some extent to which it's true that like Disney is actively engaged in, again, censorship is a weird word for stuff like this, but like they are like there's the thing where they famously extended Daryl Hannah's hair in Splash to cover her butt.
Yeah.
And it's like, does it ultimately matter that much whether that version, like the original version, exists?
Yeah.
Like, not so much for the butt cheeks, but like there is something about the fact that like, yeah, the version that everybody saw, that people fell in love with, has now been altered and does not exist.
Yeah. I mean, you do have different things. I mean, like my weird example, that's something that I've never noticed before, but it was just like Lilo and Stitch. There's a version where she runs and hides, and she hides in the washing machine, which is obviously a wildly dangerous thing to teach kids.
Yeah.
And so in the new version, she doesn't, I forget what she actually hides in, but she doesn't hide it. They just removed it, and it is unnoticeable. Like, I have watched it on Disney Plus multiple times with my niece and never noticed it until somebody, I don't even know where, probably on Reddit or something like that. Like, because of course I'm on a Lilo and Stitch Reddit forum. Shut up.
Stitch was in the animated short that they debuted today on ABC.
Oh, really? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean,
although one thing I will say is like, I am perfectly fine with pre-retconning things before they happen, like the inevitable live action Lilo and Stitch that is likely going to happen. Is not something I want to see. It's something I have no interest in. And
this one is just,
I will.
They did a short for the 100th anniversary of Disney Animation Studios.
Oh, cool. Although it is something that, like, this is a whole different thing that eventually we should do a Lilo and.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But basically, it's like something like 300 and something characters appear in the thing, and they're like doing a family picture.
Yeah.
And then like at one point, Goofy drops the camera and breaks it, and Stitch wanders over and just picks up, it's because it's like an old school camera, and so he picks up like the metal, like the slate that used to have the and starts eating it, and then Lilo has to drag him away.
One thing I will say, and would immediately get off of this, but it's one thing I will never find stopping funny, as a OG Lilo and Stitch fan that saw it when it came out and loved it and thought it was like the perfect kind of like everything that we kind of define as like good animation, what it teaches kids, what it like the way that dynamics are, because obviously Disney has long held a problem with the princesses and the dead parents and the like weird things that they're teaching, whatever, and also like very white, and that story was like great, but like Disney just didn't talk about that film because it didn't do well, and because it was released in not in the right moment and badly, whatever. But like having gone to like gone to Florida since, and like the Disney rap, everything is fucking Lilo and Stitch. It is like fucking hilarious how there is so much. Like we went to my family went down to Universal Studios, but we went to like there's a Disney park like that's just around a lake. You don't have to like buy or whatever. It's got some like restaurants and stuff like that, and everything is Lilo and Stitch. Like there's always a Lilo and Stitch. Like it is up there with Mickey Mouse. And
I will say it's one of those things that, and this is a conversation we can have in another episode because it's its own animal. But like, there was not that long ago a mentality that you didn't have to make $1 billion in theaters, because as long as you could move DVDs,
yeah,
that that it would pay you back, especially when you had a modestly budgeted movie. And so like Lilo and Stitch is a great example of a movie that did like okay in theaters. It didn't, like you said, I think the consensus was it was a bomb because it wasn't making the kind of money that like Renaissance era Disney movies had made.
yeah,
But like then it came to home video and it did really, really well.
yeah,
And that was popular enough to give it a direct video sequel and a TV show on the Disney Channel and all this kind of crap. And like it's been a staple since then, especially in terms of merchandising.
yeah, yeah.
And so again, don't want to get into that whole thing, but Clint Morris from October Coast, who runs his own publicity agency now, but he used to work for Disney, and he recently tweeted, that Disney for a while in the 90s, their philosophy was literally that the theatrical run was essentially publicity for the DVD.
Yeah.
Like
Or the
they were
VHS
making
would have been the
money
yeah.
off of home sales and off of Blockbuster, that they literally said like, yeah, we can lose $60 million in theaters because we know that we'll make 150 million back in on disc.
Yeah.
Uh,
It is funny. That was kind of our there's one last story which we'll get to, but like I've been wanting to see The Creator, because obviously it's one of those like films, like if you're gonna see it,
yeah,
see it in a thing. But like I've just been between being broke and between being like timing of actually seeing the film and that sort of thing, and
yeah,
I haven't actually had a chance to see it yet, and I don't want to miss it. Like I missed Oppenheimer, like, which is the ultimate film that you should have seen in theaters. But it is one of those, I'm like, I sat down, I'm just like, do I want to spend $40 to go see a movie that I'm like, I can buy the DVD of for 40, or the Blu-ray of for $40 for less than $40 of. And it's just funny because it's like we've had this discussion before where I'm a huge theater person, you're very much more of a home video person.
right,
And like I'm slowly getting to the point where I'm just like, I don't know. Like, especially like you could buy a 60-inch plasma now for $210 that is like, I look at, I can notice the difference between things. I don't care.
yeah,
Like the only thing I do care about is how bad the audio is, but that's a whole different story on plasmas and like how bad the audio is on those things. But it is one of those things where I just don't, it's slowly starting to tick away on me, which is bad, which is dangerous, but it is also like what then ends up being if they don't change. Like I haven't seen Indiana Jones yet,
right.
and Indiana Jones 4, I hate saying 4 because it recognizes 3 happen, or 5, I'm sorry, 5.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna say 4. I don't want to recognize Crystal Skull ever happened.
I mean, the defining imagery of Crystal Skull is when you and I went and a friend of ours had a meltdown and sat down in the middle of 13th Street in New York. And I'm like, that's what I think of when I think of Crystal Skull, is just that person sitting in the middle of the street and being like, okay, so the movie wasn't great.
Yeah, no, but anyway,
To
but
be clear, they
yeah,
did not have a meltdown because of the
because
movie. I just choose to make it funny.
but I haven't seen it yet because I'm not going to pay $25 for the digital only on Vudu, which again, like we've talked about this before, about this idea. I'm starting to get really obsessive about the fact that like, oh my God, I'm spending all this money for digital copies of things that I can't own, even as a file on a hard drive that is detached from this service that could go away.
DRM. Yeah, I mean that's the thing that I wanted to touch on earlier that we kind
Yeah.
of skipped over it, but you were talking about the early days where it was like, well, I would pay to just have this and be able to burn it onto a
Yeah.
DVD. And like, why did we lose that? It's like a big part of the reason we lost that is because as soon as they made digital available, everything became so locked down. You can't just burn a DVD of it. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when we had videotape, and again, I feel like an old person screaming at the sky, but like there was literally a Supreme Court case
Yeah.
about how you can back up your own purchases on videotape so
Yeah.
that you have a copy if something happens to your
Mhm.
tape. And then they essentially did an end run around copyright law
Yeah.
with disc, where they built in all these copy protections, and then they built in an agreement where it's like you're violating the contract if you do this.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, so my rights to do the thing is completely subject to you not sticking in a bad faith contract provision
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
fine print of a disc that you know nobody's ever gonna
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's also one thing that, I mean, one thing I mean, obviously I don't see it necessarily happening, I hope, but like it's not even, not even like something as like, oh, they're going to change the names of N-word Jim and whatever, and it's going to be
Right.
horrible on my Kindle copy of the book. They're
Yeah.
they're never going to do that. But it does make me think about like the fact of like the not horror. I mean, I guess it's again, it's like these are all low level worries on the scale of what we're going through currently as a world. But it is like, what happens if they go, oh, no, the version of ET that you have now is the version that Spielberg wants to be released, which is the one that
Yeah.
doesn't have guns in it. And it's like, does it makes it a little bit worse because you know what the original thing was, and when you watch it,
Yeah.
it looks like garbage, which like I have seen it since then, and it does
Yeah.
look like garbage because they just didn't do it, like it wasn't capable, or they just didn't do it well.
Yeah.
And also just be like, hands don't look like, why are you pointing a walkie-talkie at me?
Yeah.
Type of thing. I mean, there's just like weird, like it's a weird decision, or cigarette, whatever. But I mean, like it is definitely something that we're going into. I mean, it's wild watching on TikTok, which like is fantastic in a lot of ways, because it, like, I've been seeing films come across that I was like, I haven't seen that film in 30 fucking years. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Why is this suddenly on TikTok? Like, this is a 14-year-old, like whatever age, and it's great. Except then, like, like they have to blur out the cigarettes, and like they're doing these stupid ass things because, people still for some reason think that like, because you watch something on a 40-year-old film.
The idea of physical ownership being a guard against censorship is less like the examples that article uses are kind of silly.
But yeah. Like, it's coming from a different direction. Yeah.
Yeah. But there is also an element of like definite truth to it, because like when you, for instance, do I saw recently somebody, going back to Elliot Page, I saw somebody who did a video essay about like the themes and subtext of hard candy.
Yeah.
And you can't discuss hard candy on YouTube. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot have a serious conversation about that film on YouTube because there are so many things that you have to come up with idiotic, like, pretend words for.
I just saw literally on Twitter they were having the Unalive discussion, which is like I find it like it's incredibly dehumanizing in a way of of talking about somebody who, whether it be took their own life or to do whatever. And like, I'm not even quite sure if I'm on TikTok, but like I don't do any of that. And like I see my numbers. I mean, I know what I don't think my numbers have to do with the fact that I use the word, because I talk about Nazis, I talk about different things like that. Obviously, because it's the world that I cover outside of, I hear on ECV. Right. And so like, I don't know how I could talk about, like, I just went to a gun cult convention or festival run by the Moonies, and it was basically a MAGA festival of celebration of AR-15s and Donald Trump and election conspiracies and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know. There's only my thesaurus is only so large to have
Yeah.
words that were like where I could talk about it. Also, there's only so many ways. If it takes you like writing articles to like work around those words already are problematic because it takes like 5 paragraphs to explain what I say when I say election interference, which is or something like that. And it's just like, and it's not, and the problem is that it's not cancel culture, it's not wokeism, it's not any of this stuff. It is the fact that the large companies rely on moronic AI to do all of this stuff. And so they just go wipe. If somebody says suicide, it could be literally somebody discussing a journalistic discussion of someone, taking their own life. And it would, knock it down or do whatever it does, shadow ban, or something like that. But I mean, like we're seeing with the Palestine issue as well, Palestine and Gaza right now, where it's just like anybody who shares anything about Gaza is getting knocked because of that. And it's like, that's not because
this channel hasn't been monetized for like 2.5, 3 years because YouTube, the last time they changed a bunch of stuff, we didn't qualify anymore. But like, that's like one of the deeply corrupt things to me is that with YouTube, you say like the fact that you said Nazi means like they would demonetize this if we qualify for monetization. But that doesn't mean they're not making money. Like they're still like, because if we were actually being inappropriate to the point where advertisers were not interested, they wouldn't allow it to stand. They would take it down. Like whenever you see something that has been demonetized, that's just YouTube using this like weird fake moral high ground to steal that person's money. Because like if it was actually a problem, it would not be on the platform. And so like it's one of those, like that's such a great example of like, no, that's like, this is the real issue. It's not wokeism. It's the fact that like corporations will do anything to claim every 5 cents that they otherwise should have paid you. And that, that as a result, they're going to be like, okay, well, you said something that people get upset by.
And it's not even, I mean, this is one of the like more completely idiotic version is the fact that like, again, it's almost always done by an AI and there's no version of it. I had a video where I interviewed a QAnon supporter, and I interviewed a QAnon supporter, but I don't know how I was supposed to not, I don't know what version of how I was supposed to like argue with the person or disagree, or was there something, but it wasn't good enough. And I got a check mark against my account, which isn't a big world thing. It's like literally I use YouTube as a platform to put up videos so that I can embed them in articles. That's not like, I'm kind of trying to bring back my YouTube page half-assedly, kind of just by uploading a lot of archival things, again, like our interviews from ages ago, from Comic Related, and all these things we've done, just so they're somewhere on the internet, not on just a hard drive.
I put up some stuff on ECV that, because like the big thing for us is like we meet every qualification except for page views. And because we have not been recording regularly and we've not been posting anything to YouTube, like what I have done just to try to bring our page views up a little bit is I've uploaded a handful of like public domain movies. Where it's like, okay, so like, hey, Night of the Living Dead is on our site, and during Halloween time, maybe we'll get enough page views that we could eventually get paid one day. Even though we will not get paid for the Night of the Living Dead, because even though it's in the public domain, the composer copyright claims all of the YouTube uploads, so that the people who did the score can make money, even though George Romero and his estate don't.
But it is interesting, and this brings to the whole thing, like if you get a chance to see the YouTube Effect, I can't recommend it enough. It is absolutely fantastic. It's a documentary, and it kind of delves into,
which we were going to do an episode on once. I think we just got too drunk.
I interviewed him. You can go to my page and hear I interviewed Alex Winter. I managed to interview him for over 30 minutes without once mentioning anything he's done other than documentaries, which was like, we're like, I just want to ask you about Billiton. But it was actually a really fantastic interview. Like I said, it's up on my YouTube page, and we'll link it in the show notes or something like that. But it's a really great film that does like it's not the film on YouTube that I would make. But it is a film that is really, and I don't want to, the but isn't a, oh, it's a lesser film. It is a different film than what I would make, because obviously it is a film that I think that people who like YouTube and don't really understand already kind of what the problems are can watch and go, oh, this is something that can be done, and this is good. And
I agree, because to me, if I was like, not that I make films, but if I did, they'd have a samurai. No. If I was going to make a movie about this and had the capacity to do so, I would make something more like what you would make. But like, Alex's version is a lot more palatable to a wider audience of people who,
and I think it's actually more necessary than like, I know that like the film that I would watch, or the film that I would make, 50,000 people would see, and it would be a big circle jerk of people being, yeah, you're right, or you didn't go far enough.
Our version would have Greg Palast in it, and Alex's version had the kid from Ryan's World.
And people who you recognize from YouTube, that know the inside, and kind of like, when it comes from people who have made a considerable amount of money from YouTube, and they're saying, this is not good, guys. Like, this is not just like, it's not. And it's like, it also doesn't touch upon, which is something that I respect the fuck out of him for, is it doesn't really delve into like kind of the fake censorship issues that a lot of people have about YouTube, where it's just like, which is like, obviously we talked about censorship issues, but like, and I should not use the word censorship, but you know, the supposed shadow banning, and I'm putting asterisks and sarcasm on that, of things, but it doesn't kind of go after that kind of world. It really talks about kind of, it is not a safe, sustainable model for not only for humankind, but also specifically for what its target audience is, which is your kids. And which is like truly the dangerous thing. And I think I really respect the fuck out of it, because it really spends way more time than I would ever spend on, like, if I were to make a film again, about that world. And I actually started developing a film kind of about it, not about YouTube in particular, but about the internet. And like, it is really incredibly important about how much it talks about, because it's like, it's a world that, like, I don't have any kids. And so like, I don't know anything about kid YouTube. It doesn't show up on my YouTube at all. And so this idea that like, I learned about that family, I forget the family's name, that they spend their entire lives on, basically on YouTube. Whatever.
There are so many of them that I can't remember.
No, the one at the oh my god, something's world, Ryan's World or something.
Oh, Ryan.
Ryan's World, where it's just like, I had never even heard of them, and then like, I looked on, like, when I was watching the film on a review copy, I was like, looked down and I'm like, who is this? And I'm like, holy shit, we fucking like, subscribers they have. I mean, like, and
I mean, my daughters watched Ryan's World a lot when they were littler. We have a PS4 game that's like Ryan's Racing World. So yeah, I definitely knew who they were. And it's funny because like, it's interesting watching his parents talk, because they have some very considered opinions, and I give them a lot of credit, actually. In terms of the family channels, they seem to be functional humans, which is rare.
In
that space. The fact that they've had at least one, I think 2 more kids since Ryan. And those kids show up periodically, but are not, as far as I can tell, like main characters. It tells me that, like, it's always questionable if you're going to let your 6-year-old decide whether he wants to be an internet superstar. But like, the fact that the other kids don't seem to want to, doesn't, like, they don't seem to be forcing them to do that. Which again, that is a rock bottom bar, but also it is a bar that almost every other family channel on the internet cannot clear.
I mean, it's also, I mean, like, I actually like totally understand that it's like also would be difficult to somewhat, when it's everything's filmed in your house, how do you separate your kids from, but I think we actually had this discussion about them, where it's just like, I do wonder,
while we
like,
were watching the movie, I think we had a version of it.
like, what are they like, I wonder how the other kids are doing, because I mean, like, you got to go, it's like, they didn't want to be involved in it, but like, then are they getting the attention that, I mean,
exactly.
I mean, you have that problem kind of in almost all families. There's always one kid that gets
celebrity family. You got the like, it's interesting that now Lizzie Olsen has become the one that everybody
Yeah.
wants to, pay attention to.
Yeah.
Um,
But it
all
is,
right, you have one more?
yeah. What's
Sorry?
that? Oh, that was, I mean, I think the last joke one was that like of the weird people who I I have such a love hate, and not even a love hate, but a relationship with Pete Davidson, where like I don't know if you saw his SNL thing. I thought his SNL
Yeah,
cold open, his not the cold open, but the open was about as good as you could possibly ever
yeah,
expect, not just from him, but like from
right.
anyone that would have done it. Like it definitely could have been a bad.
It's the worst possible time for SNL to come back from an extended hiatus. Like,
Yeah, that night, yeah. But and also like just a person who is continually mixed up in the worst of the
yeah,
worst of when it comes to like TMZ's crossover
yeah.
with the rest of reality, but somehow continually is just like literally a shrug of the shoulders. I don't know why of this. And it's, yeah. And a person who I don't enjoy anything he does at
No,
all. Like I've tried really hard because I'm like, he is a person, like he's a big, big name for some
yeah,
reason.
yeah.
And
Well, it's
like,
funny. He played Blackguard in the Suicide Squad,
oh
which
yeah,
is a
yeah,
character created by Dan Jurgens,
yeah.
and so who was the bad guy in Booster Gold #1. He's
Mhm.
the first villain Booster ever fought. And so like part of me was like, hey, yeah, Blackguard, yeah. And then I'm like, oh, good, they killed him in the first 5 minutes. I don't have to pretend to like Pete Davidson.
Yeah, I think they probably that was also a perfect casting thing where it's just like
Oh yeah,
anybody who's there gets the perfect satisfaction of like, and one of the things I do respect the fuck about him is that he does seem to fucking get it.
oh,
Like all of his
100%.
everything is self-effacing about it. But anyway, but he before this turns into a Pete Davidson like
Yeah,
love hate Pete Davidson is hoping to make money by collecting thousands of sealed VHS tapes saying it's my GameStop. But where is it? I started collecting VHSs that were sealed in the box like 3 years ago. In 2026, it'll be 20 years since the last VHS was made. So 20 years goes by, and that's enough time people to be like, "Oh, that's cool." Remember, like vinyl. So I bought up the thing, so sealed ones that exist, like 3 to 5 thousand tapes.
so
um, yeah,
here's the thing. I mean, there's a few things here. First of all, VHS and vinyl is a fair-ish comparison, but
yeah,
like very much like VHS, with rare exceptions, there's not really valuable vinyls.
yeah,
Like they, even if you have a sealed version of things, like most really popular things have already been are so widely distributed that it's not actually going to be worth a lot, And there
yeah.
are exceptions, and especially like now that you're into grading, like the CGC comics people have branched out to grading things.
I can't
Um,
believe they, and so because I this is how I discovered that was when I was looking for a beta copy of the thing, and the only one I could find was
yeah,
like over $500 graded in the sealed thing, and I'm like, what? Oh fuck, they got into this too because that
yeah.
immediately. I mean, like the next copy was like $250, and it was the exact same. Like you could look at it, and it was like the
Yeah.
exact same copy, and you're like, okay, just like
So
comic books that are like,
I I I wrote an article about this actually recently because there was a USA Today article that came out about a month ago where it was like, go look through your closet. Some of your favorite movies might be worth a fortune.
yeah,
And it was something that you see a lot in the media, and I hate it. Um, and I think we've talked about this, maybe not on the show before, but we definitely talked about with the Black Diamond Disney tapes, where
yeah,
it's like there's always these articles that are like, if you go on eBay, somebody's asking $10,000 for this copy of The Little Mermaid,
yeah,
and it's like, yeah, somebody's asking that. Nobody's selling that.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
if you sort by like sold, which gives you the last 90 days of movies that actually sold,
yeah,
um, and so like I did a breakdown. Like USA Today wrote this credulous nonsense story where it was like, hey, here's all these like here's this copy of Back to the Future that's worth $15,000. And it's like, okay, so yeah, here's an interesting thing. There
yeah,
was a copy of Back to the Future recently sealed that sold for 75 grand,
yeah.
and that's notable. However, it was from the personal collection of Tom Wilson, who played Biff Tannen.
Oh
Like
shit.
he found it
Yeah.
in his closet and he's like, oh, this was the wrap gift. This,
Oh wow.
and
Yeah.
it was the very first version of the VHS that ever existed. It was from the guy who was a lead in the movie. Like,
Hmm.
this is not a normal situation,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
believe they also graded it because he happened to decide to go through Heritage Auctions, and Heritage Auctions has a thing with CGC. But in any event, so people are like, "Holy shit, he sold one for $75,000. Must be worth 75." No, it's not. Like Tom Wilson's copy is worth seventy-five
Yeah.
thousand dollars,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like nobody else has Tom Wilson's copy.
Yeah. No, I mean,
And
this is why I love is a great version right in here is that because of course they talk about like Pete Davidson says Rocky just sold for $27,000. It's my GameStop is that was
yeah,
the thing. And so they have a screenshot of like VHS like and supposedly a copy of Shrek
mhm,
sold again $101,000 at 400 over $101,000 or best offer. No
right,
idea of what the like again what the actual best offer was.
yeah,
And then you go on like I don't know if it's some sort of special version of whatever, but I'm like looking at a Shrek VHS tape 2001 DreamsWorks factory sealed graded 8.5 $11.
yeah. And that's
And so
that's the article that I wrote was basically like, okay, let's look at this USA Today
yeah,
article because USA Today is a credible news source that people take seriously. And let's break down these claims that they made about these things. And it's like I just sorted by sold, and I'm like, no, this version of Batman and Robin is not worth 30 grand
yeah,
because the only other graded version that has ever sold in the history of YouTube or of
yeah,
eBay sold for $110.
yeah,
Like that's not the same thing. Um, and so like and this is a conversation that like the people in the VHS subreddit, which I'm part of because I'm a nerd, um, really hate because like what it does do is it does bring in a bunch of like crazy speculators
hmm,
who then pump up the price on a bunch of stuff
yeah,
temporarily.
yeah,
And so it becomes like, oh, I can't get the thing that I actually want to collect as the end user because a bunch of speculators came in and pumped up the price. And now I've got to wait 3 years until it chills out.
yeah,
The other thing that's interesting and worth noting that vinyl doesn't have this problem, CDs don't have this problem, DVD doesn't have this problem. Um, VHS has a unique problem, which is that a lot of serious collectors don't love sealed versions because if it got too hot and
hmm,
humid, you could have mold on the tape in a sealed version and you
yeah,
would never know.
yeah,
Like that renders it functionally unplayable. It would ruin your tape player. And this is not a problem that you have with vinyl. If there was mildew or something that built up in a sealed vinyl, first of all, you could probably see it because the case is, but also you could just brush it off and bleach it
hmm,
and that nobody, but like, so it's interesting because like of all of these things, it's like not only is this a nonsense thing because like it doesn't really happen.
yeah, yeah,
Very, very few movies are selling for thousands and thousands of dollars. But
yeah,
also, like people specifically being like the gold standard is it needs to be sealed. Like, yeah, speculators buy sealed copies for a bunch of money,
hmm,
but actual hardcore collectors often do not want a sealed copy because they want to know that it isn't garbage.
yeah,
And so like that's something that is unique to VHS, both in the sense that collectors often don't want it, and also in the sense that like, oh yeah, there's literally a thing. Like I didn't think of it until somebody told me. But as soon as somebody told me that, I'm like, that makes perfect sense. Like
yeah,
in this specific space, like it you could open up a sealed version and it could be trash.
yeah.
And that doesn't happen almost anywhere else.
Yeah. I mean, I would say also, even as a person who likes, I'm not the reason that I'm buying VHS or might buy a thing, it is a pure collector thing. I
Yeah, yeah,
don't really necessarily have, I do have a VHS player at my house. Um, I, unless it's a copy that a thing that I only have
yeah,
records totally will play. Like I will
yeah,
totally play an old one. So I mean, like it is one of those like it is a pure collection. It is a pure I
yeah,
want it on my shelf type of thing. I want it behind me.
yeah,
Whatever. type of thing, and that is dramatically different from
Yeah,
having a
I mean,
record.
I had a print run done of my short film on tape
Yeah.
and sold it as part of my Legends crowdfunding campaign. And
Yeah.
it's like I've never watched Cooped Up on VHS, but like I love the fact that my movie exists on VHS.
Mhm.
I think
See, we need to get a Betamax recorder and start doing it on Betamax and start like
oh my
cornering
God,
that
that would be
market.
great. Unfortunately, Betamax players in the US are prohibitively expensive for
Yeah.
anything that isn't like a for-profit venture.
I think my aunt got rid of hers. I was so furious when she's like, "Yeah, I just don't have any of those anymore." And I'm like, I know that you used to have Star Wars on, like you had the Star Wars, the ones that came out on beta, she had on beta.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have not searched on eBay to see how much those are worth because I'm just, but it is hilarious because like she gave me this
I have a
collection
copy
of
of
like,
Empire on beta that somebody just recorded off TV.
yeah. Oh no, this was like a special,
Yeah, oh,
like
I
this
know.
was like pure everything, but it kills me because especially what I love is I'm like, oh cool, I got all the VHS ones and I looked at everything up and everything's worth less than $10.
Yeah.
And everything's, whatever. But it is a moment to before we leave, if you're on TikTok, look for Matt McCarthy. The no mold thing. He has like he has this insane VHS thing. I've sent you his stuff before.
Yeah.
He's an actor. He's in a bunch of different things. But he has a probably like 10,000 VHS copy thing, and
Mhm.
and most of it is just like taped off of TV stuff, and he'll go through and just like, oh, like make comments about the thing, about the commercials or the whatever. But he does always do a thing where he's just like, yep, no mold, and buy the t-shirt that says no mold on it. It's McCarthy Redhead on with 2 C's, of course, on TikTok. So
Yeah.
that's all I got.
Yeah, it's like I said, I just when I saw that you had the Davidson thing on there, I wanted to talk and rant a little bit about it because even though I know that it was mostly a joke,
Yeah.
I also know that like no, the VHS people are actually actively annoyed by his rant because again, he's contributing to this larger conversation about trying to like turn it into like a specialty collector's market where there's this huge
Yeah.
barrier for entry. And
Yeah.
it's just like one, it's just like comics. Like if you are introducing a large new group of people in who only want it so that they can turn a profit, inevitably the market will crash
Yeah.
because you're gonna have people hoarding and you're gonna have people like the demand is not going to be what you think it is.
Yeah.
And then secondly, the people who actually want it, like to have it, um, are going to despise you because you're introducing this element of like like destructive capitalism
Yeah.
into a hobby that like heretofore has been pretty chill because like VHS is not hard to find for the most part. And again, like there are things that are worth more than others, and there are things that sell for high prices.
Mm-hmm.
My son really would love to have a Cars VHS, and because it only existed through the Disney Movie Club, and because it was like the last or second to last Disney Movie Club tape that was ever made,
Yeah.
and very few people had it because by then almost everybody had converted to DVD. It goes for hundreds or thousands of dollars, and I just
Yeah.
cannot afford to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars on a VHS copy of Cars.
Yeah. No.
But
Oh my God.
but
Yeah.
that's a very specific set of circumstances, and it's also influenced by the fact that it's like Disney on it, and Disney collectors
Yeah.
are kind of their own crazy animal.
There is a which, which is such a mean thing, so don't do it. But it would just be fun to if you really wanted to fuck with him for right now, $85 you can get Cars on VHS. But here's the twist: it's in Korean.
I've looked at that a few times actually, just because I think that he would be my son in particular loves languages, and so I feel
Yeah.
like he would actually. But no, somebody actually out there on YouTube put together a video playlist of the ads that play on their Cars VHS. And
Yeah.
so if I was motivated, and I probably will be at some point, but
Yeah.
like if I was motivated, I could just download that playlist, put it on a DVD along with an MP3 or an MP4 of Cars,
Yeah.
and then just tape it.
Yeah.
And Daniel would have a functional Cars VHS, just wouldn't have the fancy cover box.
Yeah.
And that's probably something I will eventually do. I've got that playlist bookmarked. But I just haven't found the motivation.
Yeah.
But yeah, and yes, for anybody listening who has any doubt that like I'm a crazy person, yes, but you know, my son who was born in 2010, um, uh, has a fascination with VHS and comes down to my office and plays all the Pixar movies on my 13-inch screen that's the shittiest TV in the house. So
Just have like a retro corner, everything just as nice. Yeah. Of which like
oh,
you can see
I've been
wood
like
paneling and everything. So you're pretty much there anyway.
I've been coughing all the time, and I'm just like I'm wondering if being down in this basement is bad for me. And so I'm thinking I might actually have to move my office another time. And if I do, then this whole basement is gonna just get turned into like a video store. Like
Yeah.
I never put my Blockbuster shelves. I have an actual shelf
Yeah.
in front of a Blockbuster shelf. I never put it back up after I moved down here because I didn't have space. But if
Yeah.
I move this giant desk and everything else behind me out of here, then like I'll just have a Blockbuster shelf set up down here, and then like I've got all the signage over there from Family Video, and there's the
Yeah.
pool table, and it's just like
Yeah.
no, if my office leaves this space, then this space is going to become like half exercise and
You gotta get a
half
couple like wall mounted CRT TVs that are like
yeah.
playing movies on loop.
It's not a CRT, but my
Yeah.
crappy TV over there, it's an LCD TV,
Yeah.
is wall mounted, and the DVD player that hooks to it is like a region free thing so that I can play crappy like Japanese
Yeah.
bootlegs. And then the tape player that plays to it is the one that you gave me.
The
I
too
actually
good VHS player.
I've been using it. I've been using it lately to this is seasonally appropriate. I have a 6 hour um it's like a jack-o'-lantern video.
Mhm.
You know how like they have the Yule logs at Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I bought a 6 hour jack-o'-lantern video from Lunch Meat VHS last year, and it didn't come until like October 30th. And so this is the first year that I've been able to just like stick it on and actually use it for what it's supposed to be meant for, and not just like to put it on to say that I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, anyway, I don't have anything else. Do you have anything else?
no, like I said, the only other thing I wanted to bring up was that initial report about the bootlegs, and like
Yeah.
I think that this is a conversation that's a little bit more complex than necessarily people want it to be, because I do think we've seen this big influx lately of streaming titles coming to DVD for the first time,
Mhm.
and there's this conversation about the fact that like there's all this money being left on the table, and objectively, I think that's true. But also, I think that for these big studios, there's an element of like how much money has to be left on the table for them to think it's worth changing direction, because they're a battleship.
Yeah.
Like it changing direction is not fast, and it's expensive, and like at
Yeah.
a certain point, and I think that's the thing that you're seeing with like Target reducing the footprint of its discs at the same time as there's this big swell in interest in physical media. It's just
Mhm.
like, yeah, but they were already doing that 5 years, or not 5 years ago. They were already planning that a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I
And
think it's
it's
going
not
to be
like,
real
yeah.
interesting. Oh, sorry. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out in the next few years. I hope that we see more print on demand stuff, so that
Mhm.
if studios and retailers want to limit the amount of stock that
Yeah.
they're carrying, or the amount of whatever, that people can still access, especially the versions of bonus features, because a lot of the time big A-list titles will get their bonus. Like when I bought Guardians 3, I could listen to the commentary track on Vudu and stuff.
Yeah.
But like I'm 95% sure that my Clerks 3 digital copy doesn't have any of the bonus features on it that are on the disc.
Yeah.
Like and then that might not be true for Clerks 3, but it's certainly true for a lot of catalog titles. The vast majority of catalog titles, even if you have great bonus features on the home release, digital copy does not carry those over.
Yeah, no.
And
no. Let's see them.
So for me, it's like I hope at least some of that older stuff continues to be available on print on demand or in some way where like the bonus features and all the cool stuff that like DVD opened the door for don't disappear into the ether.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it was rare that we had that stuff at the time of VHS, unless you like made The Usual Suspects and they had that weird 3 VHS set that had.
I wish I knew where I own that. It came with a lighter and it came with a pin. I think it came with something else. And I owned it. It was a triple box set. The third one had all that stuff in it, like a little pouch, but it had the commentary. Just such a wild, insane thing because it was just, you know, it was just a normal length film. It was a 2-hour length film or whatever.
Oh, but it was this. I think what happened was that they were going to make that for the Laserdisc, and then Laserdisc basically stopped being a viable market in the U.S. And they were like, okay, well, I guess we made a box set for the tape.
Yeah. Now I'm checking on eBay right now, VHS for just to see how much I can kick myself for not having, because I have a insanely bad luck. I think we both do about like, oh, this is the one thing I'll pick up for a collector's thing or whatever, and it's never worth any fucking money. Of course, I don't even see it I don't even see it here.
And I'm on here. They did make a Usual Suspects Laserdisc, which you can get for $5. You can also get a version of it for $5 with Get Shorty. Clearly the VHS version that we're talking about is probably rarer and more expensive than the thing that it was created to supplant.
Yeah, very clearly. My last question is, which I'm trying to make a thing. What have you watched lately?
Man, not a lot, because
I know that like you're like watching, your viewing thing is always weird, but is there anything
I'm forever viewing kids movies over and over and over again.
Or just or like for
finally watch. Callie really wanted to see that.
What was that? I'm sorry.
My complete lack of interest. Gran Turismo.
Oh. Was it watchable? I mean,
yeah, it was watchable.
I've heard it was better than it deserved to be, basically, was what I heard.
It was. I'll say the big thing, like Callie and I had a conversation about the fact that most of the time when you make like a sports movie or this, you know, that kind of thing, you don't actually spend a ton of time just watching them play the sport, because ultimately, unless you're really into it, that can be boring.
Yeah.
And so the thing about Gran Turismo is they spent just an enormous amount of their runtime racing. It was like you get to the point where you're like, oh, this feels like it should be the climactic race.
Yeah.
That's like, this is the one that feels like it's important. And then you're like, oh, but there's an hour and 5 minutes left. Clearly there's another 4 races that we haven't, you know. And you look at it, and I compared it to Rocky. I'm like, there's a shitload of boxing in Rocky. There is more boxing in Rocky than in almost any other boxing movie.
Yeah.
But like, it was shot so well, and Rocky as a character was so compelling that like it gets away with.
I
don't feel
it's also like a lot of slow motion. Like they take a lot of time. Like a 20-minute boxing fight is, you know, if played out in real time would be, yeah.
And I don't think Gran Turismo quite got there. I think that they spent so much time racing, and ultimately you're like, no, like 15-20% less racing, it would have been fine. And like the movie would have had better pacing and would have hopped along a lot better. And again, like, really good performances. It was definitely better than I expected it to be. It was a fun little dumb movie. I think I would give it like 3.5 out of 5 stars, maybe 3. but like it was just one of those things where you're like, I just remember like that was the big thing that stuck out at me was like, oh, we're racing again.
Mhm.
That seems like this is like because again, it's not. It's about the like Gran Turismo Academy that Sony set up. That's
Yeah,
basically training kids who are good at the game to
it's
be
a
real
real
racers.
life story. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Um, and I don't know anything about it, but it's funny because you can look at certain pieces of the movie and be like, I don't think that part's true. Like one of the things in there was like I'm watching these things and I'm like, I get the distinct impression that this kid went in and just whooped everybody's ass. And so they had to build this narrative where no, 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 secretly he was an underdog. um,
yeah, yeah,
but that movie, if it was at the video store and I had it, if you like this, try this
yeah.
shelf talker card under it. Um, the big one that I would say is Kingsman. Like it so profoundly wants to be Kingsman.
Yeah.
Like because the whole thing is like he's poor and all of these other people are not,
Mhm.
and in spite of the fact that like all of the other like and you know he's being discriminated against by the veterans because they see him as an outsider, and it's like all this stuff, and it's just like no, this is just Kingsman with race cars. Yeah. Like
They're all wearing tuxedos for some reason. It's very weird.
I
Yeah.
also it's I don't know. It's one of those things where I would love to know how much of the story is actually true
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they lean so hard on the based on a true story thing. And again, like I can make my own kind of speculation, but I don't really
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
And there's a handful of things that I would just turn to my wife and be like, "Do you think that's actually no?"
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
It's like
I
you
of
get down to the last three contestants, and it just happens to be him and his bully and the cute girl, and it's
course.
just like, oh well, how's that work? um, I bet it broke down exactly that conveniently in the real situation.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, I listened to this great podcast called God Awful Movies, which is
Yeah,
all about basically most of it's Christian cinema, like bad Christian cinema.
yeah.
Not the senator, Christian movies. And
He's bad too. Then.
yeah, yeah, fair. But yeah, no, they because a bunch of the movies is based on a true story, and they're like, none of this happened. Like, what have you
No.
done? Like, what in what scenario? But I just watched basically the major reason I asked is so I could actually mention the movie that I just watched, which was The Substitute 4.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
which hey, did you know it was going to 4?
yeah.
And um so yeah, it's Treat Williams, who is always like Treat Williams. And so you can
And
expect
Treat Williams,
age.
if I remember correctly, took over the like. I think
Yeah,
the first substitute movie was
Tom
Tom
Berenger.
Berenger,
Yeah,
and then after that it was just Treat Williams. Like
yeah,
he
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
became
Yeah.
the star of the franchise.
Yeah, no,
Which
no, no. Tom Berenger wasn't
I
doing that shit
yeah,
again.
I love the idea that you have this kind of crappy B movie franchise, and like nevertheless, the guy who was your star was just like, yeah, no, I'm not coming back for the direct DVDs.
I mean, the first one did pretty well, if I remember correctly. I don't think
Oh
that
yeah,
the second one barely. There was also, I think, that like gap where it was just like far enough along where like
yeah,
no one's gonna do that. But it's wild because it deals with he basically goes into uncover a military like academy that has white supremacists in it. I'm
yeah.
working on a piece about like basically killing Nazis, and movies about that, like, you know, other than basically movies other than Inglorious Bastards that did it, you know. And there's
Right.
like Sisu, there's a lot of like really great films. The two Becky films, Wrath of Becky and The Wrath of Becky, which are actually super fun. And this one somebody recommended because I just put it out on Twitter. I'm like, what films have come out? And they're like, The Substitute 4. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because like The Substitute is like basically it's like it was like the like oh my god, what was the not Melanie Griffith, the movie where it was the blonde actress that goes into an inner city school and
Oh, Michelle Pfeiffer.
what's that?
Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah, Michelle
Secret
Pfeiffer.
Time.
It's not Desperate Measures. It was oh my God.
Dangerous
Anyway.
Minds.
Oh, okay. And so like basically it's like that meet Falling Down. It's the first
Yeah.
one. If you haven't seen The Substitute before, it was like a military white guy goes into a school and like beats the living shit out of a bunch of kids
Right.
who are like bad because they're gang people and you know they're bad. And so like the rest of them were just like just cheap, obviously cheap versions of that or whatever. But this one they actually go after white supremacists. I mean, like straight up fucking Nazis in this like military camp, and it's like wild because like it's like I texted you about this. It was like it's oddly not good in the like it's a good film. Like it's film. It's free on Tubi and a couple other services or whatever. It's on Vudu, but like it actually is like pretty solid on the way that they present what the Nazis say and like the language that they use, especially for the time period, and which is something that always like bothers me with when they have like Nazis say things and I'm like that's not something a Nazi would say. I know Nazis, like, and that's not what they would say. Like I've interviewed enough of them in my time. And it's but it was just wild because it like blew me away of like how pretty solid it was, and that like it did not take an opportunity to be like, well, you know, there are two sides. And like Treat Williams is like actively poking. There's this great moment. This is the last thing I'll say. There's this great moment where there's this one particularly like the student that's like the like he's the cadet commander. He's like the head Nazi right underneath the head of the school. And he like him and Treat Williams have like butted head literally and figuratively quite a bit already. And Treat Williams is teaching military history, and he's just like they cut from one scene and Treat is halfway through a sentence and be like, and so the UN and that's why the UN does this. And then he sees him walking in and he goes, well, let's change topics and talk about the Civil War. It's like, what history class is this? Because he goes, let's talk about this. We're like, and then he gives like a whole bunch of information about how Black troops in the Civil War participated in this many battles and won this stuff and won awards and stuff like that. And it was literally just to poke the bear, poke this kid that just walked in. But it was just like like, could you imagine being a student in that classroom? Like the United Nations in this, but let's go directly to the Civil War because this fits my particular meaning. And I just think about like the script writer didn't think couldn't he have talked about something like, well, like, and then the Reconstruction, or like let's talk about the lead up to like Abraham Lincoln or whatever, you know, things like that. No, it's like the United Nations that are like anyway, that's it. It was just, I literally just watched it before we started the podcast. It's like I had to tell somebody else about this because I know no one else is watching it. So anyway.
That's probably true. Any final thoughts before we sleep? Because I'm working in 4.5 hours.
Yeah, no, we're done. I ain't got nothing else.
All right. Thank you everybody for listening. Be back here by noon on the 5th day for more Emerald City Video, and always remember to rewind your cassettes, especially if they're moldy.
Or if not, they're moldy, you probably should throw them away. But
no, you don't want to put that in the machine. But you know.
Unless you have one of those cool like little car things, and then they're super fast. Anyway, that's a throwback to everybody over the age of 35. I won't explain it.
Now I got to go buy one of those.
You don't have one?
No, I